Essential question 3 is what combination of issues and events fueled the creation of the Republican Party in the 1850s? So one thing that led to the creation of this new political party of the Republicans in the 1850s was that the northern economy had grown and diversified thanks to the market revolution, whereas the South's had not. And remember, we talked about this when looking in period 4. Next was the creation actually of a different political party called the American Party, which was also known as the Know Nothing Party, because when they were asked about their platform, they would allegedly say that I know nothing. Anyway, the American Party was a nativist or anti-immigration party who were also very much anti-Catholic, opposing immigrants who were Catholic like the Irish and some Germans. The American Party also favored temperance, targeting the centrality of alcohol to some Catholic and some Irish and immigrant cultures. The American Party was also oftentimes anti-slavery. At the very least, they were opposed to the expansion of slavery into Western territories. The American Party is never going to be don't want to say it's not very popular, but it's never going to gain the national prominence to win national elections. So their supporters, some of their supporters at least, will eventually come to support the Republican Party once it forms. And this new Republican Party will emerge in the 1850s as a coalition or combination, really, of anti-slavery Democrats, Northern Whigs, Free Soilers, and Know-Nothings. So it's really kind of a hodgepodge of different political parties. Anti-slavery Democrats who don't support slavery as most Southern Democrats do. Northern Whigs who are joining the party as sort of a sectional party rather than as the Whig Party kind of disintegrates. Some Free Soilers will join, and some Know-Nothings will join, as their particular political parties will never be able to win national elections. So they're sort of throwing in with these other groups in order to create a national party who can compete with the Democrats. This new Republican Party relied on the ideology of free labor as opposed to slave labor, and this very much appealed to Northern economic sensibilities, which we know had developed differently because of the market revolution. The Republican Party, importantly, and you really need to remember this, the Republican Party, when it was formed, was not abolitionist. It simply opposed the expansion of slavery. So it did not actually want to abolish slavery. It would allow slavery to continue where it already existed. The Republican Party simply did not want to see slavery expand. Ultimately, this will change, and the Republican Party during the Civil War will become an abolitionist party, but when it forms in the 1850s, it isn't yet. However, it does represent a sectional split between free societies of the North and slave societies of the South. The next major conflict of the 1850s is going to be something called Bleeding Kansas. And this was a violent, or rather a series of violent conflicts between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers of the Kansas and Nebraska territories. Here we see so-called border ruffians crossing into Kansas from Missouri to cast fraudulent ballots in these popular sovereignty votes. So border ruffians from Missouri would support slavery, so they would cross over into Kansas temporarily to fraudulently vote in elections to try to form Kansas as a slave state. Violence between border ruffians along with pro-slavery settlers against free state settlers is going to cause violence that will kill over 200 people. And there are two good examples of this to keep in mind. The first one is the burning of the free soil town of Lawrence, Kansas in 1856, where border ruffians and pro-slavery settlers attack a anti-slavery settlement of Lawrence, Kansas and burn it to the ground. The other example is the so-called Pottawatomie Creek Massacre in the same year, 1856. Here, a militant abolitionist named John Brown led a brutal attack on a pro-slavery settlement at Pottawatomie Creek. It killed 5 people as John Brown and his followers hacked these people to death with broadswords. It's going to make him a central figure in the militant abolitionist movement, something of a hero to militant abolitionists. He and some of his followers will escape justice for this act, And we'll hear more about John Brown later because the Pottawatomie Creek Massacre is not the most notable event led by this man. So again, we'll come back to him in a future question. Next, in the 1850s, we have the beating of a U.S. Senator on the floor of Congress. This is the beating of Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts by a congressional representative named Preston Brooks, who represented South Carolina. He attacked Charles Sumner on the floor of the Senate because of some comments that Sumner had made in a speech that insulted Preston Brooks' uncle, and he beat Charles Sumner so hard with his cane that the cane broke. And again, he did this in retaliation for Charles Sumner's crime against Kansas speech, which also served as a kind of personal tirade against Preston Brooks' uncle, Senator Andrew Brooks. When he's talking about being anti-slavery, he's also insulting the pro-slavery Senator Andrew Brooks. The North saw this event, the beating of Charles Sumner, as Southern barbarity, and this political cartoon here kind of sarcastically mocks this event by calling it Southern chivalry, sort of almost as if it's heroic and noble, or rather the Southern notion of what chivalry is, which is actually violence. So the North saw this as Southern barbarity, whereas the South saw Preston Brooks as a hero by standing up for the South, by standing up for their values, and by standing up for the senator from South Carolina. Brooks actually received, for the rest of his life, canes as gifts, as his supporters and Southerners who appreciated what he did recognized that his cane broke in the process of beating Charles Sumner half to death. They sent him new canes to replace the one that had broken. This event really marks a new stage as these sectional conflicts and debates break down and devolve into violence. So these tensions over things like the Compromise of 1850, the new fugitive slave law, Bleeding Kansas, these things are becoming so out of hand that the violence is actually reaching the floor of Congress. The final important event here for the formation of the Republican Party in the 1850s is the 1856 election. Here, the Republicans run their first national candidate for president, and this will be a man named John C. Fremont. The Democrats will run a candidate named James Buchanan. The Know-Nothings will also run, but they don't really gain a lot of seats in the election, and the Whigs were essentially gone at this point. Now, the Republicans lose the White House to the Democrats, but they won 11 out of 16 free states, although they won none in the South. So this is something of a victory. In fact, the Republicans refer to this as a victorious defeat, as they realize they're only going to need to win 2 more northern states in the next election in 1860 in order to win the White House. So in their first attempt to win the presidency in 1856, they come actually rather close to gaining it. But it's important to note that they are very much a sectional party. They have no support whatsoever in the South. They only draw support in the North.